The night fell on Pinecraft like a thick, damp blanket that smelled of swampland and the salty air of the Gulf of Mexico. The headlights of Andrew's old Ford cut through the darkness, illuminating lonely palm trees and dense thickets on the side of the narrow road. Elaine glanced out of the corner of her eye at Andrew, who was silently staring ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel. A tension hung between them, barely perceptible but constant, like the low hum of the air conditioner trying to fight the humidity. They hadn't come here for the local charm or fresh farm produce. They were drawn by a different story, the eerie legend of the Amish Ghost Bridge. Elaine, who was fascinated by urban legends and everything that went beyond the real, had persuaded Andrew to go on this unusual night trip. He had reluctantly agreed. His skepticism always outweighed her romantic interest in the mystical. But perhaps he hoped that this shared adventure would help them overcome the coldness that had settled between them recently. And here it was, the low wooden bridge spanning a small snake-like stream looked unsettling and gloomy in the dark. The headlights pulled it from the darkness, revealing crooked railings and old, cracked planks that seemed to remember countless footsteps, and not all of them had been happy. Andrew turned off the engine. The familiar hum of the car vanished, and the silence was instantly filled with the chirping of cicadas and the distant lapping of water below. Elaine felt goosebumps run down her spine, and the tension in the air intensified. "So, shall we go?" she asked, trying to sound carefree, but her voice came out much quieter than she had planned. Andrew sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly, but he got out of the car anyway. They silently stepped onto the bridge. The wood under their feet groaned like an old skeleton awakening from a slumber. The air grew colder even though the night was warm. "There's nothing here," Andrew muttered, looking around. "Just a normal old bridge." But Elaine felt differently. It seemed to her that the bridge itself was watching them, waiting, and the wind that swept past carried the scent of ancient sorrow. They reached the middle. Suddenly, Elaine stopped. It seemed as if she heard a quiet whisper, barely audible, like a sigh in the wind. It wasn't the wind. It was a word. Her name. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, peering into the darkness beyond the railing. Andrew frowned. "Hear what? Just the cicadas." "No, I thought someone's voice. It said my name." "You're imagining things, Elaine. You read too many of your scary stories." A familiar note of irritation, which had been appearing more and more often lately, crept into his voice. Elaine felt the sting of offense, but remained silent. For the past few months, their relationship had been like a taut string. Minor misunderstandings grew into serious arguments, and hidden resentments poisoned their days. They took a few more steps. Elaine heard the whisper again, but this time it was clearer, closer. It seemed that someone was calling her name in a quiet, mournful voice that dissolved into the air. "Andrew, I hear it again. It's a woman's voice. It sounds like she's crying." "What's wrong with you? There's nothing here. You're just working yourself up." His face looked frustrated and tired in the moonlight. "Maybe we should go back." "No! I want to know what it is. That's why we came here." Suddenly, the stream below made a strange sound, like a quiet groan. Elaine flinched. She thought she saw the dark water stir for a moment, as if something was moving in it, and then something white, like a scrap of fabric, slowly floated on the surface. She looked closer. It looked like a white shirt, the kind the Amish wore. "See, you're scaring yourself," Andrew said, but his voice no longer held the same confidence as before. He himself looked a little tense, his shoulders rigid, and his hands clenched into fists. They stood silently in the middle of the bridge. The silence fell again, but now it was different, heavy, oppressive, filled with an invisible presence. Elaine felt an unseen wall growing between them. She remembered their recent arguments, their mutual accusations, and their coldness. It seemed that in the darkness, she saw Andrew's face, distorted by anger and disappointment, a look she knew by heart. Suddenly, Elaine noticed something strange on the wooden planks. Faint, dark spots, like dried blood, appeared through the old wood. Her heart beat faster. "Andrew, look!" She pointed to the floor. Andrew reluctantly lowered his gaze. "What's there?" "I don't know. It looks like blood." He looked closer. "Nonsense. They're just water stains." But Elaine saw differently. The spots seemed to pulsate, growing darker, and their outlines took the shape of small, bare feet. It seemed as if she could smell the dampness and metal mixed with the scent of old wood. And that's when it truly began. A quiet splash sounded somewhere nearby. Then another and another. The sounds grew louder and louder, as if someone was walking heavily through the water. Elaine screamed in horror and grabbed Andrew's hand tightly. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Andrew was silent, his face pale in the moonlight filtering through the leaves of the trees. Suddenly, a white silhouette emerged from the darkness under the bridge. It was blurry, indistinct, but it took the form of a girl in a long dress. Her hair was disheveled, and her hands were stretched forward as if she were looking for someone. Elaine shrieked and recoiled. Andrew froze in place, his eyes wide with horror. But the ghost was not alone. From the other side of the bridge, another figure appeared, a man's. He stood motionless, his head bowed as if in deep sorrow. And then the bridge began to influence their thoughts. Elaine suddenly remembered all the insults Andrew had dealt her recently. She was overwhelmed by a sharp feeling of loneliness and misunderstanding. It seemed as if Andrew had never truly loved her, that he only tolerated her interests and her. She felt the bitter taste of betrayal. She thought she saw the ghostly figure of Amos standing behind Andrew, nodding slightly as if confirming her worst fears. Andrew, meanwhile, felt a sudden flare of jealousy and distrust. He remembered all her late nights at work, her mysterious phone conversations. A painful thought crossed his mind that she was cheating on him. He thought he saw the ghostly figure of Ingrid, standing behind Elaine, whispering in his ear and pointing to her wandering eyes and mysterious smile. The ghosts on the bridge began to move. They walked toward each other, their ghostly hands reaching for one another, but between them there seemed to be an invisible barrier that prevented them from uniting. Their silent cries of despair echoed in Elaine and Andrew's minds, amplifying their own pain and disappointment. And then Elaine understood. The bridge wasn't just showing them ghosts, it was forcing them to feel the same things Amos and Ingrid had felt in their final moments. The desperation of loss, the pain of being unable to be together. Her gaze fell on the bridge's railing. A haunting thought suddenly arose in her mind. This is the only way out, the only way to get rid of this pain, this betrayal, this endless misunderstanding, to jump and dissolve into the dark water. Next to her, Andrew took a step toward the edge. His eyes were clouded with an incomprehensible longing. Elaine saw on his face a reflection of the same despair she felt. Suddenly, Andrew thought he saw not Elaine, but the ghostly Ingrid. Her eyes were empty, and her face was contorted in a grimace of betrayal. He flinched and took another step toward the edge. "Andrew, no!" Elaine cried, trying to reach out to him. But he didn't hear her. His gaze was fixed on the dark water below. It seemed to her that in his eyes she saw the reflection of Amos's ghostly figure beckoning him to follow. The bridge seemed to whisper the same thing to both of them. To find peace, they had to repeat the tragedy. Their broken love had to mirror that ancient tragedy. With her last ounce of strength, Elaine tried to fight the bridge's influence. She closed her eyes and remembered their happy moments, their first date, their shared dreams of traveling, his smile when she said something silly. She remembered that despite all the difficulties, there was still something important between them, something worth fighting for. "Andrew, look at me!" she screamed, her voice trembling but filled with the power of desperation. "It's not us, it's the bridge. It's playing with us. It wants us to repeat what happened to them." Andrew slowly turned his head toward her. His longing still burned in his eyes, but something familiar, something human was beginning to break through. Elaine ran to him and hugged him tightly. She felt his body tremble, his mind trying to return from the eerie abyss. "We don't have to do this, Andrew. We're stronger than this. We'll get through everything together. I believe in you. I believe in us." They stood like that for several long minutes, holding each other tightly, trying to find support in one another amidst the dark magic of the bridge. The whispers ceased, and the ghostly figures began to dissolve into the night. It seemed as if the bridge had retreated for a moment, disappointed that its trap had failed. Finally, Andrew pulled away from her. His face was still pale, but a new determination appeared in his eyes. "You're right, Elaine. We can't let this, whatever it is, break us." They slowly walked off the bridge, holding hands, their footsteps no longer sounding so frightening on the old planks. Behind them, the dark silhouette of the bridge remained, shrouded in legends and mysteries, waiting for its next victims whose hearts held sleeping doubts and fears. When they got in the car, Elaine looked back. The bridge stood in the darkness, silent and unmoving, as if waiting for the next couple whose hearts held sleeping doubts and fears. And Elaine understood that the true horror of this legend lay not in the ghosts, but in how easily external forces could awaken internal demons and make us believe in our own hopelessness. They drove away from Pinecraft, but the shadow of the ghost bridge hung between them for a long time, a reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the insidious power of obsessive thoughts.